Say again? Okay. We'll bother you for one more mic check.
Okay.
He's
Happy, happy.
just talking to the mic.
Oh, okay, talking to the mic.
He's trying to get a level.
Okay, this one?
And the one. Yeah. You have to eat these mics. Is what, that's what I always tell people, eat them instead. The idea you cannot be
In most cases.
Does that work?
You good? Yeah. Push the mains a little bit till you get feedback and be done with it. All right, I'm not sure where Sean is.
Oh, okay. This is probably. Oh. How about the top?
I think we're good with two.
Stay the whole
All right. Yeah, she can just use one of these. It's fine.
I tried to make an announcement, but I don't know if I did. Okay, thank y'all for staying for the listening session. We have some really cool questions that are going to be answered. And if anybody has any questions after, we'll probably have time for a couple questions too, right? Yay! Okay, so thank you again to Dr. Guenther. I'm so excited she's here, and I'm so excited that y'all stayed for this session and came to the service.
And do we want to pass these out? Or? Yeah. Well, thank you all for your patience and for wanting to stay. I appreciate that a lot. I was very moved by the service and the way everything worked together. I always hope it will, but you can't ever know for sure until it happens. So, again, thanks. Shaw asked me to talk about the word slave, and so I thought that might be a good place to start. It's a controversial term, and I struggled with it a whole lot. Does anybody have a copy of the book close? Yeah. It's, I was actually going to say, and she wasn't able to come today, but the artist who created the Jacob's Ladder lives in Silver Spring and was an artist in residence at Wesley Seminary. And she had a whole bunch of paintings she had done in memory of her father and let me choose. And so I have a team of people that I was working with. So this is Freedom, the Freedom Stairs in Ripley, Ohio, which is where the Parker House at the top, just at the Ohio River, where where the famous escape happened, Eliza Harris, and going over the floes of the ice with her baby, anyway. And then they went up these stairs, and she told the story of her escape to the people at the top of the stairs. So I thought this is just such a perfect thing. But the word slave is where I was going. Slave life and the power of spirituals. Someone wanted me to say, life of the enslaved. And we go through all kinds of machinations with terminology. Let me get this back to and want to be sensitive culturally, historically, in every other way to what's going on at the time. And so from the title of the book to the content of many of its 521 pages, the word slave is there. And I took it to my team, and they said to a person, and I didn't set them up, they could say whatever they felt like they wanted to say, and they said, don't you dare change that. And I can hear, Bobby McLean saying that to me exactly with his, don't you dare change that. We'll talk about Bobby in a minute. Because the deal is, it's not ours to change. They considered themselves slaves. They talked about themselves as slaves. That was their entire frame of reference as human beings at the time. And if it makes me uncomfortable, oh, too bad. I'm not the point of this. The point is being faithful. If there's a piece of art that we think is a little offensive, do we get some duct tape and cover it over or something to make sure that it's not, that offensive part isn't going to still be there? No, we don't do that. So it stayed up. I massaged a few things, but Life of the Enslaved is really pretty awkward to get into a book that's been basically written at the time this person objected. Anyway, there was a very interesting article by Graham Wood, political science professor at Yale, and writer for The Atlantic, and you may have read some of his material other times, a brilliant writer. And he wrote an article in 2022 called Call Slaves Slaves. He did that in capital letters. And I'm going to read a couple paragraphs. And I'm so dry, I think that this weather is just killing my... Oops, that wasn't my... Well, it is now. Anyway, and he went to the National Park Service website, and in a word, slave, he says, suggests that the individual's identity was more fundamentally as property than as a human. It also suggests that the person accepted their enslavement as a definition of their own identity. Additionally, it leaves out the presence of the enslaving individual or group whose ability of enforcement through violence backed the system of slavery. Describing somebody as a slave does nothing to diminish their humanity. Enslaving someone is what diminishes their humanity, not what we call. And he goes on and on. It's a very powerful argument, and he talks about the extra verbiage of the enslaved or whatever as being like bubble wrap to protect it from being uncomfortable from direct contact with the offending material. So just to think about that, we left the title as it was. I massaged some things inside the book, the text, but I was very sensitive to the people, and these are African American scholars and historians who were also my friends. And I will be quoting from a bunch of them and some of the choral conductors that I'm also privileged to call friend in our next section. But the fact that they were unanimous meant a lot to me, because I don't quite know what I would have done if they had said you have to change every word every time slave comes of the enslaved. I mean, the awkwardness would have just been horrible. I would have done it if they said it, but they said no. So, why do spirituals matter? And, parenthesis, cultural appropriation. It's just an interesting thing. Nobody wants to steal anything from anybody. But there is a certain sense of discomfort when white people are singing spirituals. Do they have a right to sing spirituals? Do white choirs have a right to sing spirituals? Do white authors have a right to write about spirituals? I mean, it's a whole big piece. In the last, 5-10 years, it's kind of become a thing. So, I have a few ideas on this subject. The history of American music is rooted in the spiritual. Back up, Eileen. American history is rooted in African American history, and vice versa. It's not separated. You can't have American history if you don't talk about this, no matter who would like to tell you differently. It just can't happen. So we have American music rooted in the spirituals. Gospel, jazz, hip hop, rap, pop music, folk songs, they all are rooted in spirituals. Spirituals have the ability to speak to us today, regardless of time or place. The music speaks broadly and deeply to people across national boundaries and social situations. There was a seminary student, anyway, I don't know that Shaw would have known him, there you are. I couldn't figure, anyway, I'm not going to say who it is in case you did, although he probably wouldn't mind. And we were rehearsing the song, Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. And he broke down and just burst into tears. And I my pastoral counseling skills kicked in, and I said, tell me what's going on here. And he explained that was a gay man. No surprise, that wasn't an issue with anybody I knew, but it was with his parents. He had told them that he was gay. He had come out to them, and they had told him he was not welcome home at Christmas. So he could not sing "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child" without breaking into tears. It took many years for them to reconcile. Well, the mother image is prevalent in African Americans as well. George Floyd, what did he do when he was being killed? He called out for his mother, if you saw those gruesome tapes. Tyree Nichols, the same thing. The motherless child is just embedded. And whether you're white or African American, that's just part of it. Spirituals tell a story and enable us to understand what was going on when they were created. The actions of some police today, sadly, are really rooted in the actions of the overseers and slave catchers of the 19th century. And it's not something that is comfortable for us to say, but I read a lot, and I can say that there are seriously disturbing parallels. Spirituals have a universality about them. I don't know if you know the British composer Michael Tippett. He wrote an oratorio, A Child of Our Time, and in it he used spirituals, British composer, and a fairly high art here, but he used spirituals to be sung by the audience, congregation if you will, except it really was an audience because it was for secular, audiences, and he used them the way Bach used chorales. It was something universal. He felt like everybody would know that. And it spoke to people that universally in his mind and others as well. There's a wonderful project in Denver, at the University of Denver, called the Spirituals Project. And I've been honored to speak out there and to get acquainted with Arthur Jones, who wrote a wonderful book, Wade in the Water. And he says, quoting, "I have come to believe there are universal applications of the teachings of spirituals to critical issues of human concern." Now, this is now, but we can also go back to history, to Dr. King. He gave us two wonderful testimonies. I don't know if you know his essay, The World House. It's not as famous as some of his other writings, certainly not as famous as I Have a Dream, but he talked about, in this essay, it's a house with different rooms, different floors, different furniture, but under the same roof. And that's how he thinks of culture. In the I Have a Dream speech, he points out that spirituals matter because they connect us with each other. And he directs people, all of God's children, that's his words, to sing, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty," America, and also calls on all of God's children, black and white, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, to join hands and sing, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last." There's unquestionably a powerful connection to be made by singing each other's songs, in his view and in the views of many others. A couple of other folks that I think you might be interested in their thoughts. Rollo Dilworth, he's music arranger and a professor at Temple, and he writes, "African American spirituals are historic artifacts. They teach us about the past, allow us to reflect upon who we are in the present, and give us an opportunity to shape the direction of our future. Spirituals are not just about the African American experience. They are about the human experience. While these songs embody the culturally specific elements of slavery and the musical sounds of the African continent, these songs also reflect the humanly universal themes of suffering, loss, injustice, marginalization, perseverance, faith, hope, and joy. This is why spirituals can and should be performed by anyone of any background, not just African Americans." And Roger is, by the way, African American. Now, there are different ways that cultural appropriation is approached. Richard Rogers, who teaches at Northern Arizona University, is quoted in a journal as saying that cultural appropriation can be acceptable through a cultural exchange in which cultures participate in a reciprocal exchange of symbols, artifacts, rituals, genres, and technologies between cultures with a roughly equal levels of power. Get to know each other through all these different ways. And I'm not singing your music and stealing it and making it my own. We are working together, and you are sharing parts of your life, your history, your culture that will help me do this faithfully. There's cultural appreciation when elements of a culture are used while honoring the source they came from. That's not theft. There's unacceptable cultural appropriation, which is theft. When somebody does something that's just really an assault on the sense of what is going on at the time, a profound offense in Rollo's words. Unfortunately, when many white choirs choose to sing spirituals, they don't approach the songs with the respect they deserve. It's not just about finding a cool finale for the concert. And, or as I saw on Facebook, and I practically jumped through my screen when somebody wrote, "Can you recommend a fun spiritual?" And I wanted to work with that. There are interesting arrangements. "Scandalize My Name," Kathleen Battle and Jesse Norman, if any of you know that, the Carnegie Hall recording. I mean, that's kind of fun, but the whole idea of scandalizing one's name that has a very deep other meaning. And I need to not spend time. I got myself off of that. That was a group that just was too negative for me. Anton Armstrong, some of you know, St. Olaf, the choir there, wonderful conductor, African American, largely white choir, largely blue-eyed blondes from Scandinavian heritage, actually. And he writes, I think he wrote this to me, because we've gotten to be pretty good friends. Too many people may hear a recording or hear a live performance and think, that would be a neat thing for my choir to sing. And they don't do any more research beyond that. And that's where the issue of negative cultural appropriation happens. For somebody just to do a spiritual because it's rhythmic and fun, and it can be, without talking with your singers, what's this about? What was going on when this happened? I mean, one chapter of my book, there are 50 spirituals, and the spiritual didn't get in there unless I could find a direct quote from someone, from one of the slave narratives. There's other times that things get talked about in different ways, but for those I wanted people to be able to say, like the Steelway narrative that was perfect, or the one that preceded Go Down Moses, to be able to put yourself in that place, in their own words. It's gold for people who really care about digging deeply and doing it right. Dialogue is one of the issues that's tricky. And largely white choirs don't like to do something that they could be seen as making fun of. Well, there are certain African Americans who don't like to do dialogue for exactly the same reason. They say, I don't want people to know I don't know proper English. And they say that, but the whole thing is the music, the rhythm is dependent on the text, and the text is dependent on the dialect. And so you can't just say, I'm not going to do it. Armstrong says, I'm a person who encourages the use of dialect, but proper dialect. I don't do German Bach motet with bad German. I learn how to speak the language. Here we go. All music is worthy of performance by anybody who chooses to perform it. This is folk music. It is music of the folk. The music that we hear today was music that served the people at the time, the communities at the time. Thank goodness that they were notated so that we are able to sing it today. There may be cultural lyrics of a song that might reference a certain specific issue, but all others have human existence and interaction stories that apply to everyone. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes. Anybody heard Kenneth Overton? He is a wonderful baritone. He's actually just directed his first opera, and he sung at the Met. He did the premiere of the African American Requiem at the Kennedy Center. I can still say that. By Damien Jeter. It was about 2 years ago, I guess. Anyway, he wrote, and this was on Facebook, and he's obviously, if something bothers him, he's not shy about sort of sharing. And he says, just like we all study, coach, research, and discover the art of opera, art, song, and oratorio, and now we're in caps, please give the same energy and due diligence when it comes to the spirituals. Folks will spend big money to seek out experts in Western European music. It'll be downright raggedy, and that's his word, raggedy, when it comes to the music that is the foundation of all American music. I'm sick of it. And that goes for choral and solo interpretations. Do the work, get it right, ask for help, or leave it alone. That's all. And when Kenneth says it, it means a lot more than when I say, if you're not willing to do the research, just don't sing the songs. Find something else. You can do Copeland, and you don't have to worry about it as much as you would with the spirituals. Theologian James Cone says, people can do research, but that's not enough. I contend, he says, that there's a deeper level of experience which transcends the tools of objective historical research. And that experience is available only to those who share the spirit and participate in the faith of the people who created the songs. I am referring to the power and energy released in Black devotion to the God of emotion. Finally, in singing this music or writing about this music, if we do it faithfully, honoring the tradition, being humble at the tradition if it's not our own, we are not appropriating another's culture. We are becoming allies, joining in solidarity with those who have struggled in the past and are still struggling today. It takes all of us to try to understand and to work to make a difference. We have the Civil Rights Movement. We're going to talk more about that in a quick sec. But earlier than that, we have the Underground Railroad, both multiracial entities. The Underground Railroad would not have succeeded if it wasn't for blacks and their courage and whites and their courage. It was a teamwork, and it was tricky, and there's a whole other subject about how you knew which white was your friend. And when they were escaping and they saw some white guy on a horse, and they said what they were doing, which was not all that usual. They didn't really want to trust at all. And he says, oh yeah, you just go down there, they'll have some food for you. You can safely spend the night. And that was somebody who was going to return them to where they had been. I mean, the dishonesty was just, without comprehension. But interracial, yes. Spirituals can help us heal today. Anton believes that when given the respect and dignity they deserve, spirituals can heal our communal wounds and bring us together. While I totally concede that this music, these sorrow songs, these slave songs came out of a race of people, they really depict human emotions and human conditions. Because of the sense of trial and tribulation, but yet joyful celebration over adversity, these songs are relatable to people all over the world because they speak of a human condition. I may not be able to solve cancer, he concludes. I may not be able to solve Alzheimer's, but I can give people a healing balm through music. And that's what these songs are. They offer hope, they offer a belief that something will be better. Now, I have been very taken with how music has been infiltrating the protests that we see on television or on Facebook News or whatever lately. I've started a file for it for the next time I teach music and social justice, but Shaw, you have to come back and take it again. Because it's very interesting. There are a whole lot of new songs that didn't used to be what I heard in protests. Oftentimes they would, go to the traditional ones. We shall overcome. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Hold on. Some of the ones that would be obvious. And they're doing some new ones. But I want to honor the origin the spirituals' origin in civil rights music. Anybody remember C.T. Vivian? He was one of King's right-hand people in the civil rights movement. And he talks about when spirituals came into being as movement music or protest music. I don't think we'd ever thought about spirituals as movement material. When the movement came, we couldn't apply them. The concept was there, it just had to have the music, and the music out of our past and apply it to a new situation to change it so it really fit. And little by little, spiritual after spiritual began to appear with new words and changes. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Or a song we're going to sing in a second. I'm going to sit at the welcome table. Now, the singing, of course, was an immensely important part of the civil rights movement. And when they went to jail, what did they do there? They sang. And there was a story about a bunch of them being released at one time, and the jailer said, "Oh, thank God, that music was driving me crazy." But that's okay. Vivian references the welcome table, and it's really kind of the poster child of the way spirituals were adapted to the protest movement. It's a song of aspiration, of hope, and I mentioned Dr. William B. McLean, Bobby McLean. If you look at Songs of Zion, if you look at our hymnal, he was an editor on many of the United Methodist publications and a stalwart. I mean, we have more spirituals in the 1989 Methodist hymnal than probably any other major denominational hymnal ever published, and that's due to Bobby. He taught at Wesley Seminary, taught homiletics, taught Songs of Zion was the name of the course, and then he said, "Why don't you come in and let's teach this together?" So I did, and I had tons of videos and CDs that I was using in my own classes. So we kind of tag teamed together, and I could kind of guess where he was going and get the stuff ready so there wasn't any dead time. Chris, we talk about dead time, we don't want it in class either, or for people to leave and never come back. But he talked many times about being with his grandmother in Alabama, and she was not a slave, but she was hired as a domestic, and they came time for lunch or dinner, and in the summer he would always hang out there, and they always ate on the back porch. And he said, "Why don't we go in and eat inside? There's a table inside, even in the kitchen. I'm not talking to the dining room, the kitchen." And she said, "No, honey, we're not welcome there, but someday we will be at the welcome table." So, I'd like us to sing this. And I've added a couple of verses in my terrible handwriting, but Chris was nice enough to copy it. There were many verses, and one of the fabulous aspects of protest music is, like we already heard, you don't have to change a whole lot. I'm going to live so God can use me. I'm going to pray. I'm going to sing. Change one word, you've got a whole other verse. Very utilitarian. They're working. They are in the fields. They are grinding grain. They are weaving. It's boring as the dickens. The music helped them do it. It also helped them be more productive, which helped them stay out of trouble, and that's a good thing. So the music had lots of aspects of it, but be able to just change a little bit. You have another verse. You have a leader, and the song leader was really, really revered. So Chris, are you revered here? Well, if it was historic tradition, you should be. Because oftentimes the song leader would have heard some of the Bible being read in the house and be able to supply verses so they could get to the next verse. But if there's only one word changing, just somebody needs to change it, and the group could change it as they wished. So I am going to suggest that we sing the first verse as it is, and maybe, shall we sing about the streets of glory too, but then drop down to my terrible handwriting. I'm going to get my civil rights, and it repeats. I'm going to get my civil rights one of these days is the end of that. I'm going to sit at Woolworth's counter. Know what that's about? And this is my favorite. I'm going to tell God how you treat me. So shall we sing that together? I'll play through once. Civil rights. Woolworth's counter. Back to welcome. They didn't have piano. Or else maybe that jailer wouldn't have been so grumpy about their singing. Who knows? Anyway, that is kind of what I plan to share. And if there are any questions about anything, I'd be certainly happy to take them. Shaw, do you want to?
Does anybody have any questions? Raise your hand and I'll bring the mic. Yes.
So Eileen, as a scholar and as a musician, would you talk about how you became aware of spirituals and what led you to focus so much of your research and work?
Oh, happy to do that. We can probably, again, kind of blame Bobby McLean. But as Wesley Seminary is, I believe, and certainly was a very diverse place, and we did spirituals. I picked them, someone else I was working with as chapel elder picked them or whatever, and I just got this feeling, there's nothing like them. They just speak to me and speak to other people in ways that other music doesn't. And I love a Brahms Requiem. I'll take it forever. You know, there's amazing, beautiful, powerful classical music. But there's still something about the spiritual, probably because of the depths that it came from. And so I just started doing it, and then Bobby, I didn't say, he sort of said, I've got to go preach here or teach here. You take this next class. So then I had to start, putting my thoughts in doing some research, and that was actually the origin of the book. It was to be taught in his Songs of Zion class. But you all are kind of nodding too, the importance of the way it speaks to your spirit in a way that maybe other music does, but maybe it's unique.
I have a question. One of the things that was so fascinating about the class is how spirituals and other music worked through all of the protests and so many of the times in our lives when we just needed to speak. Can you think of some how it's used in the current time? I know you mentioned that, or how it's been used in recent years, other than the civil rights movement, because we talked about Holocaust, we talked about so many times when it was used, and that was just fascinating to me.
Yeah, spirituals have been involved in a lot of situations, and somebody I know, but I haven't read her dissertation yet, has written a book or a dissertation on the Holocaust and its use of spirituals.
Oh.
But I don't know, I keep saying, let me know when it's available, because it would be of great interest to know that. But the approachability, it's folk music. I mean, this is not complicated music because it couldn't be. They were in the fields, they were, singing fairly quietly at their worship service because they didn't probably want to get caught, or doing whatever, and it's music of the people, which is what gives us all an embrace of this music.
Thank you so much. And does anybody else have any questions? Yes. Okay, and then I'll come back.
You talked about how spirituals are very much foundational to a lot of American music going up through, can you speak to how it, splintered out or grew into so many different varied genres, between jazz and gospel and rock, and how that evolution came about?
I probably should have a lot more detail to share than that. What I can do is say Elvis Presley. He can be the answer for a lot of things, right? But he's saying that the spirituals were in the public domain in a sense, and people sang them, and then when they started recording them, and they would change a little bit. The version of Wade in the Water that you all did reminded me a lot of a John Legend version version of Wade in the Water. And I think it's because it's melodic. They're not, it may be pentatonic, which is using basically 5 notes. So it's not a complicated thing. It lends itself to being harmonized easily. I was one of the producers of a video with Alice Parker, if any of you know her name. And she worked with Robert Shaw and did some of the best choral arrangements of spirituals there are. And she talked about how she didn't ever put anything in the harmony that wasn't in the melody. So she didn't mess around with the underlying chords. She would pull from them in interesting ways. But spirituals just gave themselves to that. And early on, with popular music and jazz coming out of all of that, and then of course hip hop, and it's, everything builds on something, and you get a raw material, and then you can modify it according to what your muse is. So the Wade in the Water was modified according to Chris's muse, and he had a muse before that. So
Hi, this is not a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for being here today and sharing your knowledge about spirituals. And also want to say thank you to our church staff, especially the musicians, for putting together this service focused on spirituals. And I found it very meaningful, particularly in this day and age when certain people in power are trying to erase diversity, equity, and inclusion from our national picture for reasons that are not clear to me. It's good to be here at a place where we can embrace them and recognize them as being of God. So thank you.
well, thank you. And thanks for the invitation, and the 2 people that I have more emails with or texts with than anybody in the history of the world. Sean and Chris, so thank you all so much.
Thank you.
There's 2 more copies of the book over here in the corner, and Eileen said she'd have you sign if you wish.
And thank you for answering all of our emails and texts.
Thank you all.
Thank you, and I hope you had a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl. And according to our Super Bowl carrying, go Seahawks.